joining us for his first interview since joining the administration as U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Scott Bessent. I like the sound of that, Secretary Bessent.
Thank you, Larry.
Welcome.
Good to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it very much. You ever thought about this flap that's developing? I'm hearing about a 5-year, or Edward Lawrence is reporting a 5-year extension, not a 10-year extension, or other flotsam and jetsam that would interfere with the Trump tax cuts?
Larry, look, President Trump has a mandate. He came in to do big things, and one of the big things that this administration wants to do is make the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. And that permanency will continue to make the U.S. the #1 economy in the world in terms of growth. We're going to bring down inflation. We're going to cut regulations, and we are going to get the tax cut. The goal is still for them to be made permanent. And as you just said, that we are going to use current policy scoring. And the scoring that up until a year ago, I was a civilian. I'd been looking at CBO numbers for 35 years in my day job in the investment business, but I never understood the way this scoring worked. And it is tilted towards spending, and that is why the spending has gotten out of control here in Washington.
And as I understand it, you all, from the president on down, but especially you want to lower spending and lower the tax rates. I mean, and what law says you can't do both? Is there some biblical chapter that says you can't do both? Seems to me it's the right thing to do.
Well, Larry, look, the U.S. doesn't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Right.
And I think we can up the revenues, we can up the growth, and most importantly, President Trump got elected because of this affordability crisis. And as the discussion, as Carolyn Levitt was questioned recently, what is he going to do for the affordability crisis? Real wage growth for working Americans is the best way to fix this. We will contain prices, we will cut regulation, but real wages for hourly workers in the first Trump administration, which you were a key part of, hourly workers' wages, they outdid supervisory wages. And as I've said, Wall Street, where you and I came from, has had it great. Wall Street can continue to do just fine. And now under this administration, it's Main Street's turn.
Let's go back. So now you're the Treasury Secretary. You were a key advisor during the campaign, and you talked about 3-3-3. And Mr. Trump repeated 3-3-3 at a number of occasions. Tell us about 3-3-3. Do you still believe in it? What does it mean? What should people think about?
Larry, I believe, now that I'm in the seat, I believe in it more than ever. And look, we didn't get to the debt and deficit problem overnight. And I noticed that Senator Schumer, who is now screaming about debt and deficits, when it was time to break open the piggy bank during COVID, and we moved from rescue to recovery, and the economy was already recovering, and the Democrats blew out the deficits, and they continued doing it right up until this past year. So as I've come into office, we are going to have the highest deficit to GDP we've ever had when we weren't in a war or a recession. So, but 6.7, 6.8% of GDP. So 3-3-3 means over the next few years, by the end of President Trump's term, getting the deficit to GDP down to something with a 3 in front of it, 3.5%. That's our long-term average. I think by cutting regulation, by sending the right signals to the market, we can create 3% plus economic growth. Non-inflationary economic growth, which is, again, what you and the economic team and President Trump did last time. And then the 3 million more barrel equivalents of energy produced by the U.S., produced in the U.S. That I had a meeting with Senator Sullivan from Alaska, and he enjoyed telling me that the Biden administration had sanctioned Alaska more than the Ayatollahs. And part of the big energy agenda is energy dominance and energy security. And I'll tell you that in some of the national security briefings that I've been in recently, a lot of the problems that we're seeing with Iran, with Russia have been these high, not only the high level of the oil prices, but where the oil is coming from. So we're going to get our budget deficit in order, we're going to up growth, and we are going to bring energy production home.
That gets you to about 16 some odd million barrels a day.
Well, no, total liquids. So total liquids, including nat gas, we're at about 21 now, 2021. Yeah. So it'd be about a 15% increase on that base.
Which would get hold down inflation and would drop a lot of prices across the board. President Trump talks about this a lot. He has a very energy-centric view of inflation, and it is true. I mean, oil impact permeates the whole economy, impacts hundreds of consumer goods and various items that we use almost every day. So this would be a tremendous, this might be the way to finally slay Bidenflation.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. And I believe that, as you said, when we talk about food prices, a big component of that is transport. And the inflation, the actual inflation number, only single digits of that is energy. But in terms of consumers' mind, and especially working class Americans, that the energy component for them is one of the surest indicators for long-term inflation expectations. So if we can get gasoline back down, heating the oil back down, then those consumers not only will be saving money, but their optimism for the future will allow them to rebuild their lives that they had to struggle with over the past 4 years.
And so, Mr. Secretary, let's go back, step back a minute. How do you see today's economy right now? Growth, inflation, interest rates. How do you look at it when you speak with the president, more or less? What are you suggesting to him?
Well, Larry, what we've seen is this gigantic government spending that has been fueling the growth. And I've talked about several times on your show during last year, we're reprivatizing the economy. And we are going to have private sector jobs. We're going to do that, obviously, be in the energy sector. We are going to have smart, safe, and sound bank regulation that gets small, medium banks lending again to Main Street. And we're going to bring manufacturing home again. So I think that we've had an economy that's been supported by the government. We are going to slowly torque that back to the private sector. We're going to bring down the government spending, get up the CapEx, and bring good-paying jobs home. Because the reason under the Biden administration you haven't gotten real wage growth, the government doesn't give government jobs doesn't give real wage growth because they increase with the inflation level.
So this is basically you want to reprivatize. What you're saying is you want more business investment, and the business investment creates jobs and higher wages. And that was the point of the Trump tax cuts going back 8 years ago when some of us first started working on them. And the thing that drives me crazy, God, I hate to revisit this, but the CBO stuff and some weird things I'm hearing from some of our Republican friends, the Trump tax cuts didn't produce growth. Yes, they did. Didn't raise wages. Yes, they did. Didn't enhance productivity. Yes, they did. But hang on a second. Didn't raise revenues. Yes, they did. Why are people panicking on Capitol Hill? Why am I hearing 5-year extensions? As you say, the president hasn't said that. Why are we hearing about why are we hearing the tax cuts blow a hole in the budget deficit? I'd say tax hikes would blow a hole in the budget deficit.
Look, if you want to look at an analysis, what's going to blow not only a hole in the budget deficit, in the economy, and in the lifestyles of working class Americans, if we do not get this tax bill done, as I said in my Senate hearings, this is pass-fail for our side of the aisle, and we will have the largest tax hike in history, and that will be on the people on our side who do not try to move this forward.
Yes, sir. Now, Trump critics say he always wants lower interest rates, and he always wants a cheaper dollar. Do you have a riposte to that? Or maybe that's true, or what do you think?
Larry, the president wants lower interest rates. And what he sees, in my talks with him, that he and I are focused on the 10-year Treasury and what is the yield of that. So the purpose of lowering interest rates is to lower interest rates. The Federal Reserve, and I will only talk about what they've done, not what I think they should do from now on. They did a jumbo rate cut, and the 10-year rate went up. Right. Now I've seen this year, despite the growth estimates going up, 10 years coming down, because I believe the bond market is recognizing that, as you and I talked about, energy prices will be lower, and we can have non-inflationary growth. We cut the spending, we cut the size of government, we get more efficiency in government, and we're going to go into a good interest rate cycle.
But Scott Bessent, it seemed like that the president was conditioning lower rates on lower oil prices. That's what it seemed. I didn't see him. I know he's had some Truth Social postings about all this in the Federal Reserve. I didn't see him attacking the Fed so much on an interest rate basis. He attacked them for permitting higher inflation, which turned out not to be transitory. But it seemed like that he really wanted to keep King Dollar. He wanted to keep the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And at the particular moment right now, he wasn't blasting, he wasn't demanding for lower rates unless and until we get the oil prices down. Thoughts?
Look, you're exactly right on his view on the U.S. as a reserve currency. That excellent speech he gave at the Economic Club of New York, you and I were there in August, they explicitly said he wants the U.S. to remain the reserve currency. You and I know that you can be a reserve currency and the price is going to fluctuate based on the market. And as I said, he wants lower rates. He is not calling for the Fed to lower rates. He believes that if we do all the things that you and I have talked about today, if we deregulate the economy, if we get this tax bill done, if we get energy down, then rates will take care of themselves and the dollar will take care of itself.
But he insists on it being the world's reserve currency. I mean, he said he would tariff 100% some of these BRIC countries if they actually went through and created another currency. They haven't yet. But he seems pretty adamant about what I call King Dollar, but what is said keeping the dollar the world's reserve currency.
Yeah, and Larry, I've been in the currency markets for 30, 35 years, and I can tell you there is no alternative to the dollar.
Right.
These other countries can talk about it. They may try to take away our reserve currency status, but there is no other reserve currency on the horizon.
Let's shift gears a bit. Much in the news until today. Much in the news. Tariffs. And Mr. Trump has had actually some success with his tariff threats, although I think he's quite serious, and at some point we'll come back to that, and tariffs will go up, not down. But how do you see, as Treasury Secretary, you're going to be a key player, according to the president, how do you see the tariff strategy right now?
Yeah, I think it's there's several different aspects to the strategy. We saw what happened with Colombia. The president threatened tariffs, and the president of Colombia not only allowed illegal immigrants back into his country, he offered to send his own plane. He threatened tariffs on, or signed an order for tariffs on Mexico and Canada over the weekend. And then on Monday, President of Mexico offered 10,000 troops at the southern border, and Justin Trudeau virtually the same thing. And this is in response to the fentanyl crisis. Also, tariffs on China. And again, this is due to the fentanyl crisis. This is not a revenue issue right now.
Will it become? Mr. Trump seems to be moving. I mean, Steve Miller said this yesterday, but I've heard from President Trump. He seems to want to move the system towards more tariff-related revenues and fewer income tax-related revenues. And universal tariff seems to be out there, whether it's 10 or 20%, I don't know. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Larry, I think tariffs are a means to an end, and I think that end is bringing the manufacturing base back to the U.S. That, in theory, tariffs would be a shrinking ice cube, that you would tariff a country, And then as the production comes back to the U.S., the income tax, the corporate revenues, and the pay income tax goes up, and the tariff income would go down. The current account deficit goes down. Our trade deficit goes down. So tariffs are a means to an end to reshore, economic security in the U.S.
But he's still concerned about reciprocity and unfair trading practices.
Completely.
Yeah.
And look, we saw several things. Probably the only good thing that I can say about the COVID crisis was it was a test run for what a hot war could look like, a deeper economic war could look like, and we realized that optimal supply chains are not secure supply chains. So, we want to bring back medical supplies. We've got to bring back shipbuilding, things like that. So we know that we have a group of industries that we were very vulnerable during the COVID crisis, that places like China, the most imbalanced economy in the history of the world, most unfair trade practices in the history of the world, were not reliable suppliers. And I point everyone, there's a very good article in the Wall Street Journal today that talks about the China shock and how much worse it was for working Americans than anyone had thought.
We're really interested in an economics article, National Bureau of Economic Research. Very interesting, the China shock. Last one, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It's just in the headlines today. Elon Musk's influence on the Treasury, Doge's influence on the Treasury. You're the Treasury Secretary. What can you tell us about this?
Larry, that Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur of this generation, and the Doge, outlook and their brief from the president, the Department of Government Efficiency, and we had the Grace Commission. You and I are old enough to remember. You were in the administration. Yep. The Grace Commission in the '80s failed.
Reagan's years.
Yep. Bill Clinton, Al Gore set up a commission on government efficiency, failed, and Doge is not going to fail, and that they are moving a lot of people's cheese here in the Capitol, and when you hear this squawking, then some status quo interest is not happy. What I will tell you that at the Treasury, our payment system is not being touched. Everything we process 1.3 billion via payments a year. There's a study being done. Can we have more accountability, more accuracy, more traceability, that the money is going where it is, but in terms of payments being stopped, that is happening upstream at the department level.
All right, well, I just, essentially you're saying you're cooperating on this government downsizing with Elon Musk and Doge.
What I'm saying is that at Treasury, our motto is to move deliberately and fix things.
I like that. Okay. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time very much.
Trump prepares to talk with Xi Jinping potentially as soon as today. Beijing announces retaliatory tariffs on the United States beginning February 10th after President Trump's 10% import tariff on China went into effect at midnight last night. China's plan includes a 15% tariff on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude oil, agricultural machinery and large vehicles, and export controls on key rare minerals. It will also open an antitrust probe into Google, months after doing the same to NVIDIA. Meanwhile, Trump striking deals with both Canada and Mexico to pause his 25% tariffs for 30 days. Prime Minister Trudeau agreeing to put Canada's $1.3 billion border plan into effect, sending upwards of 10,000 troops to the northern border. He will also create a fentanyl czar position. He'll list cartels as terrorists and launch a joint strike force combat organized crime. Mexico's President Sheinbaum also vowing 10,000 troops to the border with promised cooperation with key American cabinet positions. Trump also hinted yesterday that the European Union could face tariffs next. Watch.
We have massive deficits with the European Union, massive, like $350 billion, if you can believe it. They don't take our farm product. They don't take our cars. They don't take almost anything, but we take their cars. We have millions of cars coming in. We don't charge them tariffs. They make it impossible to sell cars in the European Union. They make it very difficult, agricultural product. They actually don't take it, and they have a lot of excuses.
So it looks like the expectation is for the tariffs on Europe to start mid-February. Samantha, your reaction?
Well, what we're seeing right now is really the art of the deal in real time. President Trump has made it clear these aren't tariffs just for the sake of tariffs. There's a broader strategy at play here, and it has to do first and foremost with resetting the table with regard to how America is treated and fairness. So whether you're a friend, ally, neighbor, or adversary, America is going to demand to be treated fairly. We've seen just within 24 hours, President Trump was able to get done more than has been done in the last 4 years. He's also made it clear this is not just a trade war, it's a drug and crime war. And so with respect to Canada and Mexico in particular, they've got a very troubling relationship with the cartels, and they need to do more to secure their side of the border with respect to this drug and crime war.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said first thing out of the gate yesterday. This is a drug war, not a trade war, because I know President Trump doesn't want to start a trade war, but he does want reciprocity, and he wants the U.S. to be treated fairly. He also signed an executive order yesterday to create the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund with a suggestion on what could be the first purchase. Watch this.
We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth. As an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it. Otherwise, we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund.
Well, they've got a lot of issues with China. This conversation with Xi Jinping will be important, Cheryl, and I don't know that China is going to want to go all in on, taking Trump to task, because that economy is weaker than anybody understands, and Xi Jinping is weaker than people know. So we'll see how much Xi Jinping wants to take this to the mat.
Well, the sovereign wealth fund idea, I think, is very interesting and intriguing. But on the China front of this, absolutely, Maria, you mentioned that yesterday. You're spot on that their economy is weakened. Xi Jinping is weakened. But on the heels of that, what the Commerce Ministry did overnight, I mean, you mentioned, the broad tariffs on LNG and oil, et cetera. But what I thought was interesting is the Commerce Ministry added several metals and metal-based products to a list of export control actions. And this is things that are used in industrial machinery, aerospace, and military applications. And no, we know they give us they give Mexico the chemicals for fentanyl, but they could also hurt us in this way. So I think that there's going to be a very nuanced, very deep conversation between President Trump and Xi Jinping. There has to be.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick are leading that project of a sovereign wealth fund. It's unclear how the fund will be capitalized, but Trump has previously pitched using tariff money. The largest sovereign wealth funds in the world are owned by Norway, China, Hong Kong, and the Emirates. And the view this morning from TD Cowen is the following. We do not see how Treasury can fund a sovereign wealth fund while Treasury is using extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on the debt. So you've got that, of course, playing out. Treasury is tapping all available pools of cash to ensure the United States can pay its bill. Diverting funds from this to a sovereign wealth fund could bring forward the so-called X date when the U.S. technically defaults on its debt. So that's also something to think about, Scotty Martin.
Yeah, aren't we waiting for this default on the debt for, I don't know, every year, every month? I mean, like, when is this going to stop? And how do you want the Treasury to pay for this? And we're the wealthiest country in the world. We have the money to do. Oh, by the way, we have the world's reserve currency. So what if we print more of it to pay for it or to fill up that wealth fund? Because guess what? We can put money into companies or projects that the government wants to do, and that can grow the fund itself once that gets going.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of a sovereign wealth fund. I certainly do.
I'll put the first dollar in. How about that? Maybe that'll get the naysayers going.
But where's the dedicated funding coming from? The analyst at TD writes, a true sovereign wealth fund would likely need a dedicated funding source, like fees paid to the government for oil and gas leases. Maybe that's where Trump is going with this. Treasury might also find a way to use the proceeds from selling stakes in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as a way to generate funding. We see funding as the most stable if Congress authorizes it. Otherwise, there could be illegal action to block the investments. So lots of questions about how this will work. Welcome back. President Trump will speak with the leaders of Canada and Mexico today after both put retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. over the weekend. Or promised retaliatory tariffs. Trump is imposing a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on energy products from Canada and an additional 10% tariff on China. These tariffs are set to take effect tomorrow, so we will see if anything changes by midnight tonight. I spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance about this on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday. Watch.
The problem with this whole idea that they're going to retaliate is they have already been taking advantage of America for decades. The retaliation is Donald Trump saying no more. We know that Mexico has allowed the facilitation of the illegal drug trade and illegal sex trafficking for years and has done nothing about it. If they want to be a better partner to us, the time starts now. We know the Chinese, of course, have stolen American manufacturing jobs for 30, 40 years, and also that they facilitated the trafficking of illegal fentanyl into Mexico, where the drug cartels then bring it into our country. We are sick of being taken advantage of.
The European Union is also vowing to respond to any potential tariff as Trump has threatened similar action on the EU. Joining me now is former House Speaker and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you.
Your reaction, Newt, to these tariffs and this overreaction on Wall Street. Stocks are selling off. The Dow is down 654 points right now on the news that President Trump will, in fact, put these tariffs into effect beginning tomorrow.
Well, look, this is a very big, very wrenching change. For really since World War II, when we were the only country that had an economy that hadn't been bombed. And we were half the world's gross domestic product. We've allowed other countries to take advantage of us for a variety of reasons, and we've gotten very sloppy about it. We've also been dominated in public policy by New York financiers who are making billions while basically allowing American jobs to go to China and other countries, but they made huge profits out of it. So what you now have is a national movement, and its leader has said, look, I want to protect American jobs. I want the American economy to grow. Well, that is, if you're everybody else. I mean, imagine you had a brother-in-law who always borrowed your car, your vacation home, and your bank account, and one morning you said, you know, I'm not going to loan you my car, you're not going to get my vacation home, and I'm taking my bank account back. You know, your brother-in-law would be really mad. Well, all these countries have been taking advantage of America, and I went through a period in the 80s and 90s when I finally realized, you know, we're just being played for suckers. You know, people talk about free trade. There is no free trade with China. There's no free trade with Mexico. You look at Canada. Trudeau, who is the most unpopular prime minister in Canadian history, instead of working with President Trump, has decided to pick a fight, which he will lose. I mean, Canada is not a big enough country economically to have a head-on fight with the U.S. because the American market ultimately means dramatically more to Canada than the Canadian market means to us. So you're living, literally, Maria, you're living through one of the great historic changes. And that's why occasionally President Trump will quote President McKinley, who was the most advocate of high tariffs, why they were good for America. His entire policy was built around protecting American jobs. And in the 19th century, we grew at an extraordinary rate and became the largest economy in the world. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing, and this is going to be a huge, by the way, this is going to be a huge change for the Europeans. They bet on regulation. We bet on innovation. They're going to lose that bet.
Yeah. And look, there's a reason that China has been stealing our intellectual property for decades. That also needs to stop. All of this bad behavior from adversaries, President Trump is saying no more. And he did expect disruption. He told me on Friday, look, we may see disruption. That's fine. And that's basically the sentiment that I got from Lee Zeldin as well as John Barrasso. I spoke with both of them yesterday, asking them about the impact of these tariffs. Lee Zeldin was just confirmed as the new EPA administrator. Here's what he said. Watch.
President Trump has done this once and it worked. We'll do it again. President Trump has thought this through. We saw it with the USMCA from President Trump's first term, which was a huge success, replacing NAFTA. And there is that moment where maybe it feels like friction and uncertainty, but President Trump's leadership and the strength and power of the American economy, we have talented people who are working alongside of President Trump to implement this agenda, and I'm confident that we'll achieve the outcome and the vision that President Trump has. He is not going into this blind. He's done it once, it worked. He'll do it again. It'll work this time too.
Are you worried that this tariff plan of President Trump is going to undermine the other policies that are very positive out of this administration?
No, I don't, Maria, because the president has such a pro-growth group of policies in terms of cutting government spending and government waste and the bureaucratic bloat that we have in our federal government right now in terms of keeping taxes low, in terms of also getting rid of regulations, unleashing American energy. All of these things are pro-growth, going to help the economy.
Do you expect that they're going to retaliate tomorrow?
Well, I would expect so, but the president has every right to hold others accountable who do not treat us fairly, properly.
So, Newt, something tells me that the U.S. is not going to be the first one to blink here. And I know President Trump is staying firm. We'll see if they blink by midnight tonight. I do want to get your take on the agenda, though, Newt, because the White House is now saying that President Trump wants to tie the no taxes on tips, overtime pay, and Social Security benefits into the reconciliation bill, that one big, beautiful bill, after House Republicans left their Florida retreat last week with no final plan to pass the agenda, Newt. Apparently, I'm told they went in there saying we're going to find $2.5 to $3 trillion of offsets to pay for all of this. They came up with $300 billion in spending cuts. They couldn't find any more.
Well, look, I think if you simply take the General Accounting Office report on theft in Medicare and Medicaid, and you take a number of other things like that, we can find the money. But it takes creativity and it takes focusing on reform, not on cutting things. You know, when we reformed welfare, millions of people went to work. They went off food stamps. They went off Medicaid. When we created Medicare Advantage, people took it because it was better and it actually saved money. So I think that if they have to be creative and not just be cookie cutters saying yes or no to small cuts. If they're creative, there's no question in my mind that we can have better health in America, we can have more honest health in America, and we can have more effective health in America. And people would like that kind of revolution, and they frankly, all of them save an enormous amount of money. Remember, we spend almost 18% of our economy on health care. You cannot continue to allow people to steal. You can't continue to allow programs that don't work. And you can't have a focus on sick treatment rather than a focus on health.
Yeah.
And so I think if you get those kind of breakthroughs, they can find the savings in a pretty dramatic way.
And I think, most people want to see a change to our health. And I do believe Robert F. Kennedy Jr., gets confirmed. But, Newt, what do you think about these committee hearings? Because what I'm hearing about Tulsi Gabbard is they're not there yet. They don't have the votes for Tulsi Gabbard. It looks like Kennedy and Kash Patel get through. I'm not sure about Tulsi. What do you think?
Well, I think she's still got some more conversations to have and to clarify a couple of things. Look, she's very smart. I've known her for years. I like her a lot. But I think she wasn't quite as aggressively clear as she could have been in that last hearing. On the other hand, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has already done the country an enormous service by emphasizing the health aspect rather than the sickness aspect. He wants Americans to be healthier. By the way, that's the least expensive kind of health care. If we keep you healthy, you don't need all those expensive procedures. Yeah,
great point. And John Barrasso told me we'll probably have another 5 confirmed cabinet members this week, including Pam Bondi, Howard Lutnick, and others. So we'll see about that. Newt, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you, sir.
Great.
Thank you.
Good to be with you.
Newt Gingrich. We'll be right back.
Border Czar Tom Homan, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. They met with troops and toured the border in El Paso. And Tom Homan joins me now. Tom, let's get right at this. There are reports that the cartels plan to attack Border Patrol agents with suicide drones. How are you going to fight that?
Well, look, I've said for a while that the cartels aren't going to take this lightly. When we secure the border, we're taking billions of dollars out of their pockets, right? Because they're making record amounts of money in alien smuggling, sex trafficking of women and children, and drugs. So they're not going to go away, quietly. They're going to fight this thing. So, we're going to take them on. Look, we got the military on the border now. Border patrol agents are well aware of the threats. There will be violence, and it's something we're prepared to handle. But I warn to the cartels: if they harm a border patrol agent, one of our soldiers, President Trump will not hesitate to take extreme action. I think President Trump will wipe them off the face of the earth, just like he did ISIS and the Caliphate. So I would think the cartels would pay attention. We have a strong president who's not going to take it.
If our troops on the border are fired at from Mexico, not necessarily with drones, but just rifle fire, something like that, what will we do? Will we fire back inside Mexico?
Absolutely. We're going to protect the men and women working that front line. I mean, they got a dangerous job, and these threats from Mexican cartels even make it more dangerous. So they're well prepared, and we'll do what we have to do to defend this country and defend the men and women wearing that badge and wearing that uniform. Absolutely, we'll take action immediately.
10,000 Mexican troops going to the border. Are they going to take on the cartels as well?
Well, I think so. Look, President Trump, again, a game changer, right? He's moving at record speed with the military operations on the border. I was with Pete Hegseth all day yesterday, shoulder to shoulder, great partner. We've already locked down the border at a very high level. I think it's a 76% decline across the southern border. DOD's in the game, and I think we're rocking it. And I think for the first time, I'm confident under this second administration, we'll absolutely have operational control of our southern border across from every mile of the border. We have operational control. That has not happened in the history of this nation. And I think we're going to achieve that goal for President Trump and under this administration.
Over the weekend, I believe more than 700 illegal migrants were arrested. They included people convicted of murder, robbery, domestic violence. 700. It's a large number, but is it enough?
Look, there were about 9,000 total arrests in the interior since we started. It's a good number. But we need more, and I'm not satisfied yet. We're going to continue running these operations. We're going to continue doing significant targeting actions. We've got to remember, we have concentrated on the worst first, right? We're concentrating on significant public safety threats and national security threats. Once we open that aperture up to those the 1.4 million that are here illegally, been ordered removed by a federal judge and didn't leave and became a fugitive, we got that whole population. So that as that aperture opens up, you're going to see the rest increase. So we're at a good place now. I'm not going to be happy till we got exactly what we want to get, but we're working our way toward there. This is, again, action we're doing right now with the whole of government, not just ICE, FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshals. We got all these different agencies coming to the table working on the interior enforcement operation with us. You're going to see those numbers continually increase as we work week to week on the interior enforcement operations.
I've got to tell you, Tom, that anecdotally, I've heard locally, I live in New Jersey and in the New York area, I've heard that the streets in some small towns are empty. The undocumented, the illegals, are disappearing. Have you heard that?
I've heard that in several instances, but look, if they're in the country illegally, they should be concerned. You and I would be concerned if we were living in another country illegally, especially if a federal judge ordered us to leave and we didn't leave. They need to be concerned. But, the immigrant community as a whole, we're not doing neighborhood sweeps. We're not looking for people different than us. We have a clear prioritization of what we're doing. So if you're here legally, you're in the immigrant community, you should feel safe and go about your daily lives. But if you're a significant public safety threat and you're a national security threat, you should be concerned because we're looking for you.
New Jersey's governor, that's Phil Murphy, he said on tape that he had an illegal migrant living in his home. He's since walked that back. But he did try to challenge the administration. So I'm waiting for the feds to come after her. This is the illegal living in his house. Now, okay, he's walked it back. What do you say to that kind of thing from the governor of a state?
It's ridiculous. And look, we're looking into it. Bottom line, he put it out there. We'll look into it. But if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, that is a felony, and we will seek prosecution. Remember, they've said for the last 4 years, no one's above the law. Well, either is he. So maybe he's bluffing, maybe he's testing us, but I wouldn't test this administration. We're taking this seriously, and anybody that knowingly impedes us, anybody that knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien is in violation of Title 8, United States Code 1324. We will seek prosecution.
Tom Homan, thanks very much for being with us today and for all the time that you've been with us over the last few years. We always appreciate it, Tom. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Welcome back. The Trump administration and DOJ looking to cut government jobs after the Biden administration's federal hiring spree. Fox Business's Hillary Vaughn is on Capitol Hill with the very latest. Hillary.
Good morning, Maria. Well, federal workers have just one more day to decide whether or not they want to quit and take the buyout, an 8-month paid vacation, or stay on the job. So far, over 20,000 federal employees have taken that buyout option, and the government expects the final number to be a lot more than that. But if not enough workers take the offer, there could be layoffs. According to the Washington Post, a supervisor at the Government Services Agency sent a memo saying if that's the case, layoffs are, quote, likely. The goal is a 2 to 5% reduction in force government-wide. But while the federal workforce is being downsized, so is our spending. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOJ, has been busy deleting contracts that they think are unnecessary. Yesterday alone, canceling 12 consulting contracts, saving taxpayers $30 million, also ending 12 more leases for unused office space, saving $3 million. And so far, President Trump is happy with what Elon Musk and his DOJ squad are doing.
Well, many ideas, but look, he's done a great job. Look at all the fraud that he's found in this USAID. It's a disaster what the people, radical left lunatics, they have things that nobody would have even believed. The whole thing with $100 million spent on you-know-what, with money going to all sorts of groups that shouldn't deserve to get any money.
But Elon Musk's demolition project on government waste and fraud is sending some Democrats into a spiral. They are mad that Musk is making all these changes, so mad that some of them want him locked up.
We have got to tell Elon Musk, nobody elected your.
He must be made to pay. We must enforce the law. Lock him up. Lock him up.
It is pretty clear we have to shut down the Senate. We are at war.
So some Democrats may think that Elon Musk is the enemy, but a lot of Americans think the biggest threat to America right now is our debt and our out-of-control spending. And they're happy to see that these cuts are being made, but clearly these cuts are a touchy subject for some Democrats. Maria?
Wow, boy, are they mad, Hillary. All right, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I want you to listen to what Democrats had to say about the administration shutting down USAID. Watch this.
This is a corrupt abuse of power that is going on.
This illegal, unconstitutional interference with congressional power is threatening lives all over the world.
This is a constitutional crisis that we are in today. Let's call it what it is.
We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like.
Elon Musk responded on X saying the corrupt politicians protesting outside the USAID building are the ones getting money from USAID. That's why they're there. They want your stolen tax dollars. Come on in, Ben Domenech. Why are Democrats keen on saving this agency?
Well, Stuart, the thing that is the problem with USAID, and this has been true for decades now, is that they don't like the United States part of USAID. This is a point that Marco Rubio made eloquently just yesterday. And this is something that has always been a very frustrating aspect of the way that they behave. They throw money in all these different directions overseas toward projects that would never get approved if they actually had to go through a traditional congressional review process. And the idea that we are in a constitutional crisis over something like this is absolutely laughable. USAID was created, obviously, by an executive order by President Kennedy back in the day. This is something that should absolutely be folded into and part of the tools used underneath the Department of State. And that's why I think that what is happening right now is a healthy dynamic, saying these are things that should not be just the ways for bureaucrats to spend money willy-nilly in accordance with woke or DEI political agendas. It should be something that is actually decided and determined by people who've been approved by the Congress to lead the cabinet of the executive branch. And that's something that I hope we get to eventually.
Musk is surely making waves, isn't he? Ben Domenech, thanks for joining us this morning. Great day. Thank you,
Good to
sir.
be with you.
Trump says Canada should join the U.S. as the 51st state. Do that and you avoid all tariffs. Kevin O'Leary joins me now. Come on in, Kevin. That doesn't seem like a realistic proposal to me. So how do we actually win this trade war? And tell me, what does winning look like?
So this is not the first time Trump has talked about buying Canada, and Canadian people do not want to sell their sovereignty. That's been tested and polled now for a couple of months since it first came out. But what has happened remarkably, and this is very interesting, the more this narrative continued about the potential of an economic union around energy and making something so large that China would never catch up to it, then there was a lot of interest amongst Canadian people. In fact, it polled up to 43% of Canadians wanting to know more. So as always with Trump, you've got to distinguish the signal from the noise, but also the very fact that this economy is unique. 17 of the U.S. states, their number one trading partner is Canada, and Alberta has 5 times more energy and gas and oil than the entire United States. There is some opportunity here. It's not crazy, and people want to understand more.
Is there any possibility that negotiation would take care of this in the short term? We've already heard that President Trump has spoken with Trudeau once this morning and will speak again at 3 o'clock this afternoon. There's scheduling calls with the leader of Mexico. Is there a possibility here that there could be a negotiated settlement relatively quickly?
Yes, it's unfortunate it's Trudeau because he's been calling Trump all weekend, not getting his call returned just till now, because these two have a bad relationship from the very first term. And along with Freeland, who negotiated NAFTA too, she was the finance minister, just quit. Trudeau's on his way out. It's unfortunate that this wasn't happening 6 weeks from now, when we would have had a new government in Canada potentially. However, it is what it is. And you ask me, is there a chance? Absolutely. Trump is a negotiator. Everybody's talked about that. If he gets what he wants between now and midnight, this whole thing goes away, and then we can talk about the economic union again. Obviously, there's a lot of angst on both sides of the border because this trading partnership is massive. It's massive. And so figuring out what the long-term implications are is almost impossible. But I don't think there will be long-term. I think this thing gets worked out quickly, if not today, quickly. And then we move on to trying to look at the opportunity of a behemoth economy where there's no tariffs, north, south, east, or west. That would be interesting.
Got it. One more for you. A new poll from the New York Times. It says most voters do not believe the economy is important to Democrats. We have yet to get a real Democrat response to the tariffs. Where is their leadership on the economy?
I felt from the election night, when it occurred, that it was a good thing that happened to the Democrats in this sense, Stuart. They should reboot. They really have to get rid of the old guard, the Pelosi and the Obama and movie stars like Clooney, deciding who should be anointed in leadership. That last candidate was a disaster. Everybody knows that. It's true. So run a process, start anew. The new leadership in the Democratic Party is an unknown man or woman we've never heard of, probably. And that's a good thing for them. They've gone so far off the tracks that nobody wants to vote for them, including Democrats don't want to vote for them. So at the end of the day, it's reboot time, and they have to really look inwards and say, what does it mean to be a Democrat? It used to be the party of the people. Somehow, some way, Trump stole that from them. And America fixed itself in this election. It went back to more common sense policies, and here we are.
Kevin O'Leary, always a pleasure. Come back and see us soon, please, Kevin. We've got lots of stuff for you. See you later.
Take care.
Welcome back. Well, we are up to nine of President Trump's cabinet nominees now in place after Christopher Wright was confirmed last night as Energy Secretary in a vote of 59 to 38. The Senate Finance Committee will vote on Health and Human Services nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. today, while the Senate Intelligence Committee will also vote on DNI pick Tulsi Gabbard. She picked up a key endorsement from moderate Republican Senator Susan Collins yesterday. Elsewhere in Washington, Secretary of State Marco Rubio becoming the acting director of the U.S. Agency for International Development as the Trump administration moves to shut down the USAID agency entirely. Yesterday, employees were reportedly locked out of the office. Democrat Hawaii Senator Brian Schatz said that he will place a blanket hold on all of Trump's State Department nominees until he backs off of his push to shut down USAID. This hold could impact Elise Stefanik, Trump's pick for U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Joining me now is Pennsylvania Senator David McCormick. Senator, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
What's going on with your colleagues on the left with all these games to obstruct? Now they want to shut down everything in terms of further picks for the State Department until President Trump changes his mind on USAID.
Well, first, I mean, these last 2 weeks have been incredible. I was in Pennsylvania over the weekend. I did a number of visits. People cannot believe the amount of energy, the productive, the success that's happening under 2 weeks of President Trump. And there's a lot of optimism for this bold leadership, and he's really living up to his promises. One of the things he said was that we need to stop investing in things around the world that don't make sense. And, you know, foreign assistance in pursuit of our national security can be a good idea, but what we've clearly happened here, we've lost our way. DEI initiatives in Serbia, LGBTQ in Guatemala, supporting Hamas with huge investments of U.S. taxpayer dollars. So President Trump, through Secretary Rubio, is trying to get his hands around these things, and he absolutely has to. We've got to make sure taxpayer dollars aren't going to these crazy things. And frankly, the Democrats have been obstructing and trying to delay President Trump getting his team in place, and we as Republicans need to fight hard. President Trump needs his team, and he needs it now to continue this great turnaround of America.
Yeah, congratulations to you, Senator. I know you're digging in. It's great to see you here pursuing your priorities. But I guess I want to get some color on these Senate confirmation hearings, because I know we're up to 9, but the president needs his team in place. Are, in fact, your colleagues on the left obstructing this process, even though they're in the minority?
Yeah, no doubt about it. They are dragging it out. And the way I think about it is, listen, President Trump won this enormous historic victory, and he promised change. And he's picked and nominated a set of candidates to be nominees to be his team that's going to shake things up in Washington. We need to lean into that and support him in trying to do that. And what's happening is the Democrats are trying to drag this out. We've had 9 confirmed. We'll have 13 by the end of the week. And we need to keep pushing to get, and listen, these are not going to be establishment status quo figures. Yeah. We need people who are going to bring change to Washington. That's what the president has done with his nominees.
Yeah, I want to get back to the cabinet in a second, but let me ask you about this hearing, because the Senate Banking Committee will hold a hearing tomorrow on financial institutions debanking clients over various regulatory concerns. Founder and executive chairman of Black Rifle Coffee Company, Evan Hafer, one of several witnesses set to testify. You're on the Senate Banking Committee, and I want to understand who and where is the debanking underway. I actually spoke with the First Lady, Melania Trump, during the campaign, and Melania told me she herself was debanked. Watch this.
But later on, more when we left the White House, when I established my own business, as you said, the bank suddenly informed me they will not be able to do business with me anymore. Also, I had very prominent email distribution service provider just rapidly terminated my agreement. So suddenly, as well as the university, I was all agreed that they will accept my donations for the foster students, and because of the board directors, they called back, they found out that it was me, they didn't, they said we cannot go on. And it's very, very sad, because who suffered? They were children from foster community.
So what about that, Senator? I mean, after President Trump called out Brian Moynihan in Davos saying you better not debank conservatives, both Bank of America and J.P. Morgan came out swinging, saying we don't do that. We don't debank anybody because of their politics. Tell us the facts. Are major banks debanking conservatives?
Well, listen, this is un-American. It's un-American to discriminate or persecute based on political views, whether it's in our education institutions or financial services. The hearing is designed to get to the bottom of exactly what is happening. What are the facts? It's unacceptable. We're going to understand the lay of the land in terms of conservatives being persecuted based on their political beliefs in financial services. And to the extent that that's happening, and it's clear from my campaign trail that people think it is happening in Pennsylvania, then we need to act. And that's what the banking committee will do. But we got to get the facts first. And that's what this hearing is all about.
All right, well, we'll be watching that closely. Let me get your take on tariffs, sir, because you were a businessman. You understand the global story. But China has been undermining the United States for decades, and now it claims to be hitting back with these retaliatory tariffs beginning February 10th after President Trump's 10% import tariff on Beijing went into effect at midnight. Trump's tariff threats led to deals with both Canada and Mexico after he agreed to put a pause on the 25% tariffs for 30 days. Both nations' leaders agreed to help at the border. Your reaction?
Well, listen, this is a game of chess, and we have a master chess player in President Trump. On the campaign trail, and President Trump and I campaigned on this, stopping the flow of fentanyl from Mexico, from China into Mexico, from Canada. And these tariffs are designed to stop that day one. A number of other things, but that's the primary goal of this first round. And we have to stop. We've lost 100,000 Americans, 4,000 Pennsylvanians last year. I saw fentanyl parents this weekend, and I support this 100%, as well as all the other actions. And it appears like it's working in terms of getting Canada, Mexico, other countries around the world to make sure that they're prioritizing America's interest. We got to stop the flow of fentanyl, and I think we'll have to see how this plays out. But I've got a lot of confidence President Trump is managing this well and making sure that American interests are being protected.
Is there any other way to push back on communist China for all of its bad behavior undermining the United States, or is it just tariffs?
Well, tariffs is one way. But listen, China has access to a lot of things in the global supply chain that it's using to counter U.S. interests. So I think we need to think about our export controls, our sanctions. We need to make sure that China's pulling its weight in organizations around the world. And if it's not, withdrawing American support. There's a number of things we can do, including blockading fentanyl ingredients coming into our country. There's a whole bunch of tools, but the tariff tool, which President Trump is using, is a good one, and he's using it well.
Senator, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for weighing in on all of that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon. Dave McCormick on Capitol Hill.